Hi, this is Steve Queen. Welcome to the Livewick Media YouTube channel. This is part 2 of a series on perseverance, and I would like to remind you of the key verse for this series, and that is found in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. It reads this way: "Consider it or count it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing." That is what we want as we follow Jesus, right? We want to be mature and complete, lacking nothing. So that's what we're talking about today, and we're going to be going to Hebrews chapter 12. We're going to be looking at a picture that is used in the first few verses of Hebrews chapter 12. So if you're there, go ahead and follow along with me. Hebrews 12:1. "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood." So we're going to talk about this picture of the race that is used here. Again, the focus is perseverance. Perseverance is essential if we're going to be mature and complete, lacking nothing in Christ. And, I personally have never persevered through cheesecake, or pick your favorite dessert, insert that there. I've never persevered through a nap. I've never persevered through a jacuzzi tub. But life is typically not cheesecake followed by a nap in a jacuzzi tub, right? We encounter things along the way that are not what we want, things that are not pleasant, not comfortable. On a regular basis, we encounter these things. And what are we supposed to do when we encounter things that are not pleasant, that are not what we want? Well, we're supposed to persevere through some of them. And even the ones that we can change by the power of God, by faith, even then, there's typically an element of perseverance. In the previous video, number 1, we talked about how a good visual for what perseverance is when you line up your hands like this, and that is exactly what happens when we get clarity on a particular issue. We have the will of God, it's right here. And then we begin to get pulled by different things. People, circumstances, all kinds of things start to pull us, and sometimes even get like this. And what we've got to do is set our hearts and our minds back on what we know the Word of God to be and stay true to that. Perseverance is about staying lined up with the plan of God and the will of God for us, and not giving way to the distractions of this life. So we're going to talk about running this race and what it looks like when you run this particular race. So look with me again at Hebrews chapter 12. And verse 1 says, "We're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses." He's been talking about that in the previous verses, saints who've gone before us. He says, "Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles." So we have to throw off something. If you're going to run a race and you realize you have something on you, you forgot that your backpack with all your books or camping gear or whatever is on you, and you've got a 40 or 50 pound weight attached to your body, and you're trying to run a race, man, you need to throw that thing off. It's going to hinder you. It's not going to help you. And in our race that's marked before us, that Christ has given us, when we discover that we have a weight, what are we supposed to do with it? Throw it off. Get rid of it. Because if God has given us a race, then we need to run that race with perseverance. Run it to win, not to just plod along and hope something good happens, or say, well, I'd like to run my race, but I got to have this, and I got to carry this, and I got to have these things, and all this stuff. And then I guess I'll just run the best I can. I've known people, many through the years, that had things in their lives that were weeds and thorns, like we looked at before in the parable of the sower in Luke 8. And they just made a decision that, I'm not getting rid of this. And it hindered their race. The word was anemic in them, to use the garden analogy. To use the race analogy that's presented in Hebrews 12, they were running with a big backpack and clunky boots and who knows what all on them. And unfortunately, they would then complain about how hard the race was. And sometimes when that happens and you have a relationship and you point out to them, man, you need to throw some stuff off, then they get upset. What do? I mean, that's just speaking the truth in love. So we are to throw off everything that hinders, everything that hinders. And I tell you, it's this kind of focus. Please hear this from somebody that's down the road many decades in my walk with God. I'm no genius. I'm not some spiritual giant. I'm just a person, just a guy, okay, that wants to walk close with Jesus. I want every day to count, every minute. He is the reason that I breathe. And I trust He's the reason you breathe. And you want to live for Him effectively. Know, brother and sister, that He has a race for you. And it unfolds one day at a time. And you, just as you are in this here and now, have a race laid out before you. And it's important that you run that race, that you walk that path, that you apply yourself today, not in your strength, in His strength. And when, not if, in my experience, when He shows you, like He does me, hey, here's a thing that's a weight. You know what you need to do. What is that? Throw it off. Okay? So, throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. See, when we identify sin, that should be easy for us to note and say, hey, this sin is entangling me. Clearly, it's sin. Get rid of it. But sometimes the weights are a little harder to pitch off of us because they're not sin. They're just a weight. Things that maybe a hobby that's gotten way too big. Or like in my own experience, sometimes I get fixated on a thing, even a good thing. And then when I get too fixated on that, you know what happens? It starts to get too big in my inner life, in my garden. It starts to get outside its appropriate boundaries. That starts to become a hindrance for me. And that didn't just happen 20 years ago. That's happened recently with me. So we're all in this together. Let's encourage one another and help each other run our race. Okay. So lay aside the sin that so easily entangles and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. There's perseverance again. We have to persevere. It's easy to start things, harder to finish, correct? A lot of people can start a race, but how many will finish it? All you have to do to start a race is just fall over forward. And you started, right? But to finish, you've got to run every single stride. Every single stride. And that is why every single day in your life does matter. We attain most things in life incrementally. Rarely is it a lightning flash and a big boom and ta-da, suddenly your superhero outfit comes on you and your cape's flapping in the wind. No, most things, including spiritual progress, is gradual. It's day by day by day, step by step, stride by stride is how we get there. So he says, run your race, lay aside the sin and the weights, run it with perseverance. Verse 2, let us fix our eyes on Jesus. Fix our eyes on Jesus. Not even fix your eyes on spiritual growth. right? Fix your eyes on what or who? Jesus. Anything of value that you hear anybody say had better tie back to Jesus, or you have a right to question it. In my race takes me to Jesus. And in my race, it's Jesus who lives in me and through me that empowers me to run the race. And ultimately, your race should be filled with Jesus and running to Jesus. We fix our eyes on Jesus, not stuff, not other people's approval, Jesus. So fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. He began your faith and mine. He will finish out and perfect and mature your faith and mine. Who does? Brother Doodad, sister, what's her name? No, Jesus does. Jesus does. And this same Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him, he set his eyes on the joy set before him. The joy was having us in his family. For the joy set before him endured the cross. You may have endurance instead of perseverance in your translation. For the previous verse, he endured the cross. He persevered through the cross. How? Because he looked to the joy set before him. The cross was not fun. The cross was painful. The cross was awful. The bloody beating beforehand and being nailed to the cross, it was horrible. But Jesus went into that for the joy set before him. You see that? He was willing to persevere through the cross to get to the joy set before him. Scorning its shame. He knew the shame that the cross would bring. He knew it. Public ridicule, all sorts of things go along with that. And he scorned it. He went, whatever. That's all you got? Psh, please. For the joy set before me, for doing what my Father sent me to earth to do, for rescuing these people from darkness and bringing them into light, giving them new life, giving them a life full of me and my spirit, and a path to walk and a race to run and a field to work and relationships that are healthy. Yeah, I'll endure that. I'll persevere through that. There'll be shame. Whoo, really, shame? That's all you got? Whatever. That's what scorn is. It's just like, please. That's how Jesus looked at the cross, scorning its shame. And he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God after he conquered. Boy, I tell you, that is a picture for how we conquer right there. And it says in verse 3, consider him, that is Jesus, who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Such opposition included the cross. No one's ever crucified me, not yet. I mean, people may laugh or make jokes or think you're a moron for following Jesus or whatever. That's minor compared to what he did. And so the writer of Hebrews is telling us, consider Jesus. He endured incredible opposition, including the cross, by the way, from sinful men. And do that so that you and I will not grow weary and lose heart. We won't grow weary and lose heart, which means we're going to persevere. You see, all of us, from the time we receive the word of salvation or the word of anything from God, back to the parable of the sower, we take that word in and it needs to go deep, and the depth of that word going in us will be challenged. How secure is it? How deep does it really go? And then the weeds and thorns will come in to try to choke it out. What we've got to do is throw off the weeds and the thorns, right? Get them off of you. And any sin too, get rid of it. And for the joy set before us, we line up and we stay lined up with what God has given us to do. It stays like this. We don't let it get all crazy. If it does get crazy, we bring it right back. For the joy set before us. So you and I have a race, and we have to run it with perseverance by fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who showed us how this works, who showed us what it is to have the word from God and to start the race, to run it with perseverance, stay focused, and get to the end where he sat down at the right hand of the Father. And we're going to run our races, right? We're going to persevere in the power of the Spirit. And when we cross that finish line and this earth life is over, we'll enter into the glories of heaven and all the rewards that Jesus has prepared for us. So I hope that you have internalized and will internalize this message as well. And I look forward to getting on to part 3 in the very near future. God bless you. Have a great rest of your day and stay locked in and fix your eyes on Jesus. See you soon. Bye-bye.